Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons so you don't miss our next true crime story. Today's story is one that will shake you to your core. It's about a young mother who cried for help inside one of America's most infamous jails, but no one came. This is The Baby She Never Held, Tragedy Inside Rikers Maternity Cell. The screams echoed down the cold concrete hallway of Rikers Island. Please. Somebody help me. The baby, she's coming. Jennifer Mejia was on the floor of her cell, gripping her swollen belly. Sweat poured down her face. The other women in nearby cells banged on their doors, shouting for help, their voices blending into chaos. But the hallway stayed empty. The correctional officers passed by once, glancing through the narrow metal slot, and kept walking. Hours dragged by. Jennifer's screams grew weaker. She begged for water, for a nurse, for anyone to listen. But inside those gray walls, she was invisible. When help finally arrived, it was too late. The sound that followed was not a baby's first cry, but silence. And in that silence, Jennifer realized the truth: her baby, the one she had waited months to meet, would never open her eyes. The guards called for medical staff, their radios crackling, but Jennifer just sat there, frozen. Her body shook. She didn't cry. She didn't move. She just stared at her hands, empty and trembling. Outside the cell, officers whispered, "She was screaming all night, no one answered?" Another shrugged. "We thought she was exaggerating." But deep down, everyone knew what had just happened inside that cell was not an accident. It was neglect. It was indifference. And it would soon become one of the most heartbreaking scandals in Rikers Island's dark history. Months earlier, before she ever wore a prison uniform, Jennifer was just a young woman from the Bronx. She was 31, soft-spoken, and always smiling when she talked about her baby girl on the way. Life hadn't been kind to her. She grew up in foster care, bounced between relatives, and worked 2 jobs just to get by. When she found out she was pregnant, she promised herself that her daughter would have the love and security she never had. "I'll protect you," she whispered every night, rubbing her belly. But one mistake changed everything. Jennifer was arrested for a minor charge, something that could have been handled with community service. But because she missed a court date, the judge ordered her held at Rikers while she waited for her next hearing. She was 7 months pregnant. She thought she'd be there for a few days. But those few days turned into weeks. At first, she kept to herself. The other women liked her. She was kind, polite, and always talking about baby names. "Maybe Sophia," she told her cellmate one morning. "Or Amelia. I want her name to mean strength." But the farther her pregnancy went, the more anxious she became. The medical visits were short, often rushed. Guards sometimes ignored her requests for vitamins or clean sheets. "Stop complaining," one officer snapped when she mentioned her back pain. "You're in jail, not a hospital." Then, one night, the pain started, sharp and unbearable. Jennifer pressed the emergency button. No one came. She called out again and again. The hours crept by. Her contractions grew stronger. Other inmates shouted for help, kicked their cell doors, and begged the guards to listen. But by the time they opened her door, the baby was already there. Still. Silent. Jennifer never got to hold her. And while the jail later called it a medical emergency, those who were there knew better. They saw what happened. They heard her screams. The truth was, Jennifer's cries were ignored until it was too late. As the sun rose over Rikers Island that morning, a stretcher rolled down the hall, covered by a white sheet. Officers looked away. Some whispered prayers. Others kept walking, pretending they saw nothing. But one inmate whispered through the bars, "That could have been any of us." Jennifer was taken to the medical wing, her wrists cuffed even as she lay weak and bleeding. When she asked where her baby was, no one answered. And in that silence, something inside her broke. The morning after the tragedy, Rikers Island seemed quieter than usual. The buzz of officers' radios, the clanging of cell doors, all of it felt heavier. Word had already spread through the women's unit. Everyone knew about Jennifer. "Did you hear?" whispered one inmate through the vent. "They let her scream all night," another replied. "The baby didn't make it." Jennifer lay in the infirmary, her body weak, her spirit even weaker. Her wrists were cuffed to the hospital bed as if she was still a danger to anyone. The nurse on duty avoided her eyes while checking her pulse. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said softly, but her voice trembled with guilt. Jennifer turned away. "I begged them to help me," she whispered. "I told them something was wrong." Outside her room, 2 correctional officers stood guard, whispering nervously. "You think they'll investigate?" one asked. "Man, I hope not. If the press finds out." But someone already had. A few days later, Jennifer's sister, Maria Mejia, got the call she never expected. She dropped her phone when she heard the words, "Your sister lost the baby," inside the jail. Maria couldn't breathe. "What do you mean she lost the baby? She was supposed to come home next month." Her mother sobbed in the background. "They didn't take care of her," she cried. "I knew something bad would happen there." Maria tried calling the jail for answers, but every time, she got the same cold response. "There's an ongoing investigation. We can't comment." But Jennifer's story wasn't going to stay quiet for long. A week later, a local news reporter from the city got a tip from inside Rikers. A pregnant woman gave birth alone in her cell, the baby didn't survive. The reporter, Julia Martinez, started digging. She called the Department of Correction for a statement. They claimed Jennifer had been attended to promptly and that staff responded as soon as they were aware. But Julia's sources told a different story, one of ignored pleas, delayed help, and a woman left to give birth on a filthy cell floor. She wrote the article. Within hours, it spread across social media. The headline read, "Neglected Rikers, woman gives birth alone in jail cell, baby dies." The public was furious. People demanded answers. Activists protested outside Rikers gates, holding signs that said "Justice for Jennifer" and "End jail neglect." Inside the prison, Jennifer was taken to an interview room. A woman from the Department of Investigation sat across from her with a notebook. "Jennifer," she said carefully, "can you tell us what happened that night?" Jennifer's hands trembled. "I told them I was in pain," she began. "I pressed the button. I screamed. Nobody came. I thought I was going to die." Her voice cracked. "When I saw her, she wasn't moving. I held her for a second, but she stopped, tears flooding her eyes. Then they took her away." The investigator looked shaken. "Did you see which officers were on duty?" "Yes," Jennifer said quietly. "I remember their faces." Meanwhile, the Department of Correction tried to control the damage. Officials released a statement saying they were reviewing procedures and that the staff involved had been temporarily reassigned. But behind closed doors, officers whispered that everyone was covering their own tracks. "Don't say nothing to nobody," one sergeant warned his team. "The press is looking for blood." But the truth had already escaped the island. In the Bronx, community leaders demanded justice. Lawyers stepped forward to represent Jennifer. "This was preventable," said attorney Samantha Ortiz. "She was a human being. She deserved care, not cruelty." And as more details came out, the city learned the shocking truth: Jennifer had pressed the emergency button 6 times that night. Guards had walked past her cell 3 times without checking inside. Each minute they ignored her was another chance lost. In her next court appearance, Jennifer sat silently in her orange jumpsuit. The judge looked at her with pity. "Ms. Mejia, I've read the reports. I'm very sorry for your loss." Jennifer nodded but said nothing. She didn't trust anyone anymore, not the guards, not the doctors, not even the system that said it protected her. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras flashing. Maria held her sister's hand and spoke for her. "My sister begged for help," she said firmly. "They ignored her. They let her baby die. And now they want us to stay quiet? No. We want justice." The crowd cheered. The city listened. But inside Rikers, some people were still trying to make sure the truth never fully came out. That night, a correctional officer slipped a folded piece of paper under Jennifer's door. It had no name, just a few handwritten words. Be careful. Not everyone wants the truth to be heard. Jennifer froze. Her hands shook as she read it again. Someone inside Rikers was hiding something, and they didn't want her to talk. Days turned into weeks, but inside Rikers Island, time moved differently, slow, heavy, and full of secrets. Jennifer stayed mostly silent, afraid that every word she spoke was being listened to. The warning note she received kept replaying in her mind, be careful. Not everyone wants the truth to be heard. At night, she barely slept. Every sound, a door creak, a radio beep, footsteps, made her heart race. She started noticing things she hadn't before, guards whispering when she passed, her mail arriving already opened, her medical forms suddenly missing from the file. Someone was watching her. One afternoon, Officer Davis, a younger guard who'd always treated her kindly, leaned close during meal rounds. Jennifer, he whispered, pretending to fix the trace lot, you didn't hear this from me, but stop talking to the investigators. They're trying to pin it on one of us, and nobody wants to go down alone. Jennifer looked at him, frightened. They can't silence me forever, she said softly. Davis glanced around, nervous. This place doesn't work on can't, Mejia. It works on fear. Then he walked away before anyone could notice. Outside the walls, her story kept spreading. News stations aired her case night after night. Politicians spoke about reforming the system. But while the world debated, Jennifer was still trapped inside the same cold walls where her baby had died. Attorney Samantha Ortiz fought hard for her release, filing motions, demanding medical records, asking why no one had been suspended. But every request was under review. Every answer came late. Then, one morning, Samantha arrived at Rikers for another meeting. Her face was pale. Jennifer, she said, setting a folder on the table, we just got something big. She opened the file. Inside were copies of internal incident reports, documents no one outside the jail was supposed to see. One of them, dated the night of Jennifer's labor, listed the times officers claimed to have checked on her. But the times didn't make sense. They said they checked at midnight, Samantha explained, but we have surveillance timestamps showing no one walked near your cell until after 2:30 a.m. Jennifer's mouth went dry. So they lied? They didn't just lie, Samantha said grimly. They falsified the records. The realization hit Jennifer like a wave. Not only had they ignored her cries, they had covered it up. Meanwhile, the Department of Investigation was closing in. Investigator Claire Simmons had been quietly interviewing inmates and officers for weeks. Some were too scared to talk. Others broke down crying, saying they still heard Jennifer's screams in their sleep. Finally, one officer agreed to speak off the record. His name was Officer Lewis. I was in the control booth that night, he admitted. I heard her pressing the button. She kept saying the baby's coming. I told my supervisor, but he told me not to worry about it. Said she was just being dramatic. Who was your supervisor? Claire asked. Lewis hesitated. Sergeant Miller. That name appeared in every report, the man in charge of the overnight shift. A week later, Jennifer was summoned again to the visiting room. She expected her lawyer, but instead found investigator Claire waiting, holding a manila envelope. We've confirmed neglect, Claire said gently. The sergeant on duty ignored multiple alerts. We're recommending charges. Jennifer's breath caught. So, there will be justice? Claire sighed. Maybe. But they're pushing back hard. The department doesn't want the public to think Rikers is dangerous for pregnant women. Jennifer clenched her fists. But it is. Yes, Claire said. And that's why you have to keep talking. Don't let them scare you. That night, Jennifer sat on her bunk, staring at the small window where she could see the lights of the city she once called home. Somewhere out there, people were chanting her name, demanding change. But in here, she was still a prisoner. Then, as the lights dimmed for the night, a voice came through the vent. "Mejia, you still awake?" It was her old cellmate, Tasha. "I heard something," Tasha whispered. "They say that Sergeant Miller, he's talking. He's saying they told him to keep it quiet. Higher-ups. Maybe even medical staff." Jennifer sat up, her heart pounding. "You mean, more people knew?" "Yeah," Tasha said. "And one of them just quit last week. No notice. Just disappeared." Jennifer pressed her back against the wall, fear twisting in her stomach. The cover-up went deeper than she thought. The next morning, chaos erupted. Officers ran through the halls, radios buzzing. Word spread fast: Sergeant Miller had been found dead in his car, parked just outside the Rikers staff lot. No one knew if it was suicide or something else. And as the news broke, Jennifer realized the truth was no longer just dangerous, it was deadly. Rain poured over New York City the morning they found Sergeant Miller's car. It sat half submerged in the corner of the Rikers staff lot, windows fogged, engine off. When officers opened the door, the smell of gasoline and alcohol filled the air. Miller's head rested on the steering wheel, and in his lap lay a folded piece of paper. The note read only 3 words. "I couldn't live with it." But even before the ink dried, people started to whisper, was it really suicide, or was someone making sure he never talked? Jennifer heard the news from Officer Davis during morning rounds. "They said he killed himself," he muttered, keeping his voice low. "But nobody believes it." Jennifer froze. "He was the one who ignored me?" Davis nodded slowly. "Yeah, but he wasn't the only one. And if you ask me, he knew something big. Something about the higher-ups." Jennifer gripped the edge of her bunk. "Then why would they let him die?" Davis gave her a long look. "Maybe they didn't." By now, her story was national news. Every major outlet was talking about it. Protesters filled the streets outside City Hall with signs reading "Justice for Jennifer" and "Who Killed the Truth?" The mayor's office announced an independent review, but many believed it was just to calm the outrage. Attorney Samantha Ortiz called Jennifer as soon as the story broke. "Miller's death changes everything," she said urgently. "We're filing for full disclosure. If there's evidence he was pressured, we'll find it." Jennifer's voice trembled. "Do you think they'll hurt me too?" Samantha paused. "Not if the world is watching," she said. "And right now, everyone is." The next week, investigators searched Miller's small apartment in Queens. Inside a locked drawer, they found a USB drive labeled Incident Night. It contained video clips, security footage from Rikers, timestamped the night Jennifer gave birth. But one file was corrupted. Another was missing entirely. The remaining clips showed only fragments: an officer walking past Jennifer's cell at 12:17 a.m., glancing through the slot, then continuing without stopping. A shadow moved behind him, another officer, never identified, who entered the control room minutes later. And then the cameras went black. The footage resumed at 3:06 a.m., the moment Jennifer was finally found on the floor, clutching her baby. When the investigators compared it to the official report, the timeline didn't match. Someone had erased nearly 2 hours of footage, the 2 hours that mattered most. Back at Rikers, Jennifer sat with investigator Claire Simmons once again. The woman's face looked tired, her voice hoarse from sleepless nights. "Jennifer," Claire said softly, "we recovered part of the surveillance footage from that night." "But someone tampered with it." Jennifer frowned. "You mean, deleted?" "Yes. And we think Sergeant Miller might have kept a backup. But now he's gone, and the rest of the evidence is missing." Jennifer swallowed hard. "So they got away with it again?" Claire hesitated. "Not yet. Someone else out there has that missing file. Miller was paranoid, he might have shared it before he died." Jennifer leaned forward, her pulse racing. "You have to find it." "We will," Claire promised. "But you need to stay safe. Don't talk to anyone you don't trust. And if anything strange happens, call us immediately." That night, the prison was eerily quiet. Jennifer lay awake, listening to the rain tap against the small barred window. She thought about her daughter, the baby she never held, and the promise she made the day she lost her: "I won't let them forget you." Then, just after midnight, she heard a faint scrape under her cell door. Something slid across the floor, a folded piece of paper. Her heart pounded as she opened it. Inside were just 2 words, written in shaky handwriting: "Check laundry." The next morning, during her work shift in the prison laundry room, Jennifer's hands trembled as she sorted uniforms. Near the back of the shelf, she found an old pillowcase sealed inside a plastic bag. Hidden within it was a small flash drive wrapped in tape. Her breath caught. Could this be it? She didn't say a word. She tucked it deep inside her waistband before the guards came in. That night, when Samantha came for their legal visit, Jennifer slipped it into her hand under the table. Samantha gave a tiny nod. "I'll check it immediately." 2 days later, the world changed again. The footage from the flash drive was leaked online. It showed everything: Jennifer begging for help, pressing the emergency button over and over, while 2 officers stood laughing near the control booth, scrolling through their phones. The timestamp proved they heard her. They simply didn't care. The video spread like wildfire. Millions watched in horror. The Department of Correction tried to shut it down, but it was too late. Rikers Island was once again the center of national outrage. And for the first time since that terrible night, Jennifer Mejia felt the faint spark of something she hadn't felt in months: hope. But as the world demanded justice, one final question remained. Who slipped that flash drive under her door, and why? The video shook the entire city. News anchors replayed it every hour, each time with the same haunting silence between Jennifer's screams and the guards' laughter. Protesters flooded the streets. Rikers Island's name was once again linked to cruelty and corruption, but this time, it felt different. This time, people were listening. Jennifer watched the coverage from a small television in the common area. Every time her own voice echoed from the screen: "Please. Somebody help me." She turned away, trembling. She didn't want to hear it anymore. But she also knew that without that recording, the truth would have stayed buried forever. Attorney Samantha Ortiz called later that evening, her voice full of emotion. "Jennifer, it's official. The city has suspended 3 officers and opened a criminal investigation into the incident." Jennifer closed her eyes. "Does that mean they'll finally pay for what they did?" Samantha hesitated. "It's a start. But there's still one thing we need to know: who gave you that flash drive?" That question haunted Jennifer. Late one night, as she lay awake, she remembered something: the handwriting on that small folded note: "Check laundry." It looked familiar. The letters were sharp, rushed, slightly tilted to the right. She'd seen it before, but where? The next morning, she asked Officer Davis quietly, "Did Sergeant Miller ever write notes like that?" Davis frowned. "Miller? No. He typed everything. Didn't like handwriting. Said it left a trace." Jennifer's mind raced. If it wasn't him, then who? Then, from across the room, she caught sight of a janitor, a woman named Evelyn. She was an older inmate assigned to cleaning duty, quiet, barely spoke to anyone. But months ago, right before her due date, Evelyn had helped Jennifer clean her bunk. She remembered Evelyn giving her a small smile and saying, "Not everyone in here's heartless, you know." That same tilted handwriting was on the tag of Evelyn's mop bucket. Jennifer approached her carefully during mealtime. "Evelyn," she whispered, "did you send me that note?" The woman didn't answer at first. Then, without looking up, she said quietly, "You found it then?" Jennifer nodded. "The flash drive, it was you, wasn't it?" Evelyn finally met her eyes. "Miller didn't kill himself, Jennifer. He gave me that drive the day before he died. Told me if anything happened to him, I had to get it to you." Jennifer's heart pounded. "Why me?" "Because he said you deserved to be heard." Evelyn's voice shook. "He was scared. Said someone higher up, someone from the top, told him to delete the footage and file false reports." When he refused, they threatened to ruin his life. The next day, he was gone. Jennifer stared in disbelief. "You risked everything to help me." Evelyn gave a small, sad smile. "I already lost everything, honey. You still got something to fight for." A week later, federal investigators arrived at Rikers. The leaked footage had forced the Justice Department to step in. They demanded all surveillance data, all officer logs, and all communications from the night of Jennifer's tragedy. Within days, they found evidence of cover-ups, emails between supervisors discussing how to minimize exposure and control the narrative. The corruption wasn't just one night, it was built into the system. City officials scrambled to distance themselves. The commissioner resigned. A full overhaul of jail procedures was announced. But none of it could bring Jennifer's baby back. Months passed. Jennifer was finally released from Rikers, her minor charge dismissed after the city dropped her case in the interest of justice. As she stepped out of the gates, the winter wind brushed her face. She looked up at the gray sky and whispered, "I kept my promise." Reporters swarmed her, cameras flashing, microphones pushing forward. "Jennifer, do you have anything to say to the city?" one shouted. She took a breath. "I just want people to remember that no one deserves to be ignored. Not in jail. Not anywhere." The crowd went silent. Behind her, Samantha placed a hand on her shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. Jennifer nodded. "No," she said softly. "We're just getting started." A year later, Jennifer sat in a small park in the Bronx, beside a white memorial stone with a baby's name carved into it, Amelia Mejia. Flowers surrounded it, bright and alive. She placed her hand over the name and whispered, "You changed the world, my little girl. You made them listen." Across the street, a young reporter filmed a segment about the new law named after her, the Mejia Act, a policy requiring jails to provide proper medical care and emergency access for all pregnant inmates. As Jennifer watched, tears filled her eyes. The pain would never go away, but her story had become something bigger, a voice for the voiceless. Then, as she stood to leave, she noticed a small envelope tucked under the flowers. No name. No note. Just two words written in the same familiar handwriting. "She's proud." Jennifer smiled through her tears. The fight was over and love, at last, had won. If this story moved you, don't just scroll away, hit the like button to honor the truth, subscribe so you never miss another real-life story like this one, and share this video to make sure voices like Jennifer's are never silenced again. Your support helps these stories reach the world, and together, we can keep the truth alive.